Amen. How's everybody doing? Can y'all hear me? Sure. We're still working out the kinks. Justin, can you go to the soundboard or somebody back there and give them more volume on this thing? We haven't EQ'd this mic, so it's still kind of flat. So, how's everybody doing this new year? Doing pretty good? Well, I can tell you this right now. I know everybody's feeling the excitement here. I know I'm super excited about where the church is going. Is anybody else feeling a good excitement here? I know. There we go. That's great right there. Thank you. I don't have a big booming voice, so I need to turn the Johnny Cash button on because I don't have that nice baritone voice. I get it from Dad, I guess. But there's a lot of things going on. I know it kind of sounds silly, but to me, I feel like a good step forward is with this sound system that God's blessed us with, and I'm so thankful for it. And you guys don't know how long us on this band have been asking the Lord to break something. Because I knew that was the only way we were going to get something. No, we've been playing this for a while. It just kind of took something to push us forward. But that kind of brings me to what I'm talking about today. Moving forward. And you know, I know, like I said, it sounds silly, but I feel like this is kind of our first step. And then we've gone out and we've prayed, and we're almost, I mean, how far away are we from breaking ground? We're pretty close. With the new building, we have to move the electrical pole, we have to dig up the foundation. We're very close to breaking ground. And y'all, we haven't put up a new building, I mean, ever. Not since 1987 when this original building was built. We haven't put up a new building since then. And so if you do the math, I was born in 87, so that makes this building how old? How about my wife? Maybe she should tell me. Adrian, how old am I? 30. No, I'm not 30. Seriously though, this is a true story. I'm wasting time because y'all tell me I preach too short. Someone's gonna take my time today. How about that? But a month or two ago, she told me I was 28. This is before I turned 28, which by the way, I'm 28. She told me I was 28. I'm like, wait a second. Am I? No, I'm not. No, I'm 27. No. And she's like, no, you're 28. I'm like, really? And after I was like, dang, I guess I am 28, but I wasn't. She was just picking with me. So, thanks, sweetheart. she's gonna be mad at me, but she's not. Y'all, I can't be mad at her. She cooked me black beans yesterday. She didn't. Mom didn't. We'll talk about that after church. But y'all, we're moving forward, and it's really exciting. This new building has really got me excited because our school is growing. Our church is growing. Our leadership is more tight and unified than we've been in a long time. And it's really exciting to think of the things that God has for us and how happy I am, at least. I know that you guys are feeling the same excitement that I am. But you know, it could be easy, and I don't think anybody's doing this, but y'all, as you know, ministers and preachers, when they get up and preach, they preach about things they deal with. And so I feel like I preach about moving forward a lot. So maybe that's a sign that I need to trust God more. But it's sometimes easy to kind of sit back and say, you know, I'm really comfortable where I'm at right now. Does anybody ever do that? Like you need to do something needs to change, and you're like, but it's so comfortable here. Let me ask you, how many times this week have you had to get out of bed and it's been nice and warm and you're like, do I really need that job? Yeah, a couple of us. So it's sometimes when you're comfortable in one spot, you don't think about moving forward that much, especially when it's been good for so long. But we need to push and shake things up, y'all. We need to try to do different things, take risks. You know, that's hard sometimes because, you know, as a church, you know, we don't want to get in a financial bind, if you will, where we owe banks money. We don't want that. But we have to do things to keep us moving forward. But whenever we're moving forward, we have to prepare for trials and tribulations. You guys know that, right? Let me just show of hands how many of you guys have done something and immediately were hit with something that stopped you. It happens a lot. It's happened with us already. we start planning. It's like, we think we can make this building $50,000. And the next thing you know, it's like, not $50,000. It's not that bad, but still, it hits, things seem to want to stop you. And even just in the last couple months, some things have popped up. Now, they're small things, and they're not even that big of a deal, but things have happened. We're like, man, that could really escalate. And we don't need to do that. We don't need to let that happen. And a lot of times, most of the time, it's the devil coming in trying to cause confusion and separation, right? And I can tell you this, in the history, at least of this church, because this is the only church I've really been a part of for my whole life, every time that we start to grow and we get excited about growing, the devil comes in and causes separation. It happens so often. But I really feel good about this, where we're at now. Because I feel like we're all here together. We're all unified in one accord. And I'm really excited about that because we haven't had that all the time. But he tries to turn us against each other. He tries to come in, and this is not what I'm preaching about. This is just a side topic. I told you, I'm trying to take a little bit more time. But sometimes he wins, and it's a shame that it happens, but he's not going to win right now because I'm coming up and declaring against it. Amen? Amen. But of course, it's not just the devil that stops the progress. Sometimes in our own little minds, we can stop things. And matter of fact, that's a lot of times what happens, is that we overthink things. We complicate things. We start to rationalize things. We make committees for things. That's a really Baptist thing. The church that we came from, how many committees did matter of fact, how many committees did this church have when we first got here? We had committees on committees. You can't make it up. It's true. Like, we had to vote in order to change a light bulb. Is that a true story? It's a little exaggerated, almost. But we've come a long way, and that's a good thing. But y'all, sometimes we can overthink these things and psych ourselves out. I know even with this sound system, which it wasn't a whole lot of money, y'all. It was a little bit, but even then I was like, man, what if it gets worse than it was? And it was something that was on my mind. I was overthinking. I just got to stop and trust God. So let's think about a story in the Bible where people were moving forward and they immediately got trapped. In particular, the children of Israel. What about when they were moving forward out of Egypt? What happened immediately to them? They got caught at the Red Sea, in between the sea and Pharaoh coming after them. See, they were moving forward, and nearly immediately they were hit with the crisis. I mean, like that. Of course, we already know the story. God handled it, and not just handled it, but made a miraculous statement at that time. But the first time that they really experienced some difficulty, as they're moving forward, they just crumble up like a cheap umbrella, excuse the cheap pun. But we're going to be mostly in Exodus chapter 13 and 14 today, so if you want to go ahead and get your finger in there, we're going to be jumping around a little bit, but basically staying in the same story. While you're turning there, I'm going to break down kind of the history, as I like to call history by Rob. And let's just go through I know you guys know this because you learned this in Sunday school, but just in case you don't, I'm going to go ahead and tell you what happened. Everybody know Jacob? Yes. Okay. He had a son named, he had a bunch of them, but one of them that was very popular with him, who had a very nice coat. Joseph. All right, you learned that same story I did. So Joseph was sold into, all right, we're on the same page here. He became very powerful in a country called Egypt. There you go. We got some smart people out here, I tell you what. And then he had a dream about a famine that was going to happen. What's a famine? Sunday school lesson. When there's no food, okay? And so a famine came over the land, and Jacob and his sons and his family didn't have any food, okay? And they knew that Egypt had food, and so Joseph's brothers, yes, the one that sold him into slavery, went to Egypt to find food. There was a family reunion there. Things were happy. They sent for Jacob. Now, you don't have to turn there. I'm just going to read it for you real fast. In Genesis 46, verse 3. Now, let's think. You think Jacob would be super excited about leaving his home to go to Egypt? Probably not. But look what God said. God said to Jacob, I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I will make you into a great nation. God knew and knows what he's doing. He was planning this even way back then. He was instructing him to go to Egypt. He was planning even then. And when they all first got there, they were treated very well. Go read it in your Bible, it's there. Now, in chapter 47 in Genesis, if you want to go there and check on me, always double check your preachers, because we can be wrong sometimes. They had to start selling things because they had to pay for the food. So first they sold their belongings, their possession. Then they sold their land. They sold their livestock. I don't remember the exact order. And then they even gave up their freedom. It's in there. Read it in chapter 47, Genesis, verse 25. And they said, "You have saved our lives. May it please my Lord, we will be servants to Pharaoh." Now, at this time, things hadn't exactly turned south yet, if you will. They were still, living comfortably there. But then the Israelites multiplied greatly, is what the Bible says. And a new Pharaoh came into power, and he made the Israelites work hard as slaves. He was afraid of them, actually. And so, let's look at these things right here. What happened next? They were slaves in Egypt. And then God came in and he rescued them miraculously. We know the story. Any of you guys ever seen, this is for the younger people my age, Prince of Egypt? The cartoon, it's a really great movie. It's a cartoon that's really good. And then how about the old classic? Not that old, I guess. The Ten Commandments. You guys remember that one? It's also a pretty good one too. So he used Moses, and Moses went in. Of course, they had the plagues. And then Pharaoh let them leave, okay? And when they're on their way out, what happened? Pharaoh's heart was hardened. He went to retrieve them. And like I said, as soon as they were faced with this difficult trial, they folded up. And it was I'm sure, a tough time for them. But I know for myself, and maybe you've done this too, you think, man, these children of Israel, these Israelites, man, their faith is weak because they've seen all these things, and we're like, if I was there, wouldn't have any problems. Anybody ever feel like that? You just think, it's like, man, these people are so hard-headed and just weak-minded. But do you think that maybe if we were there, we'd be the same? I know we talk a big game, but let's just be honest here. Do you think that sometimes even in our life that we're as weak-minded and as hard-headed as those children of Israel? I know I am, so I can only speak for myself. All right, so let's see where they're currently located. We've gone through all the history of what's going on. Let's get to where they're currently located. Exodus 14, verse 2. The Lord, let me see, I think I miswrote it. The Lord, tell Moses to tell the children of Israel to set up camp between Migdol and the sea. That's in chapter 14, verse 2. And so they were camping next to the sea. Now, I'm not a military tactician. I was an ROTC in high school. I was. And I don't know a lot about, preparing for war and battle. But you would think that having the sea behind you would be good, right? Because you have protection behind you. But when you're just a bunch of slaves and farmers, I don't think that we would do very much better. Now, I know we have some soldiers in here. Where's Miss Peggy at? Hoorah. She could probably take care of all of us because she's a Marine. And I'm telling you, if anything goes down in the church, I'm hiding behind Miss Peggy. That's a true story. I love you, Sister Peggy. But I mean, honestly, we're just a bunch of rednecks around here. We know how to shoot guns, but we're not military, most of us. So if we were blocked between the sea and an army of probably full of Marines, let's call them, I don't think we would stand a very good chance, right? Or is that just me? Well, anyway, it's not a good place to be right there. They're blocked. They are stuck. They're in a hard place. So they're moving forward. They immediately stop at this nice destination. Now look, me and Adrian just went on a cruise and we stopped at the ocean. It was beautiful. I was just sitting back and we were enjoying the breeze. So you think for a second they got there, they're like, okay, we can relax a little bit here by the water, enjoy the breeze, enjoy the view. And then they start hearing and seeing all these soldiers coming for them. And then what happens? They're not too happy about that. And if you read it in the word there, they go in some pretty detail about what they're feeling. But let's think about three things, okay? I went to a Baptist school, so I learned 3 points always. So, 3 things that the children of Israel forgot. If you're going to write them down, write 3 things And you're right. 1, they forgot. 2, they forgot. 3, they forgot. That's how I need to write these notes and put them on the bulletin, but I'm just not that organized. So the first thing that they forgot God's protection and provision. Okay? So let's look back at some of the things that God protected and provided them by. He brought the number one, biggest thing, he brought them out of Egypt. I mean, that's a big thing. When you're a slave and then you're no longer a slave, that's a good thing. I've never been a slave before, but I've worked at some pretty terrible jobs. And it felt really close. And when you finally put your 2 weeks in and say, I'm out of here, and you walk out the door the last time, it's like freedom, right? Yeah. Miss Peggy knows one of them that I worked at because that's how we met. That one job. Anyway, so they're no longer slaves anymore. They're free. They get to leave this unknown country to them and go back to their home. That in itself is the most amazing thing, that God is taking care of them. He's protecting for them. He took care of them during the plagues. You know, all the Egyptians were being hit hard with these plagues. You know, we've gone through them before, and they weren't. They were protected by them. Now, God instructed them, but he was protecting them, you know. And then this next thing, which I thought was really cool, when they first got to Egypt, they were given a lot of wealth. They had to sell it back. But when they left, they didn't leave empty-handed. Let's read in Exodus 12, if you flip back a couple pages. Exodus 12, 35 through 36. The people of Israel, I'll wait for a second. I'll give y'all a second to flip there so you can read it with me and see. I'm not making it up. The people of Israel had also done as Moses told them, for they had asked the Egyptians for silver and gold, jewelry, and for clothing. And then verse 36 of chapter 12. And the Lord had given the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they let them have what they asked. Thus they plundered the Egyptians. Okay? So not only did they leave free, but they plundered them. And that's pretty cool. You leave, you're a slave then you leave and you take whatever you want. I mean, that's a pretty good deal right there. And so the Lord is providing for them, taking care of them. And then another thing that the Lord did for them that they forgot. He had already given them cover during the day and light at night. Right? Remember that? Exodus 13, 21 through 22. And the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of that cloud to lead them along all the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, that they may travel by day and by night. The pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night did not depart from before the people. Imagine if we're walking in a very, me and Tyler were talking yesterday, and we had an experience during the hot of the summer when he had a blowout in his car we were working on, and we were just talking about how hot it was. Imagine even probably hotter than that in the desert, and then the Lord takes care of you and gives you shade, and then at night he gives you light. I mean, we understand because now we have electricity, but they didn't have electricity back then. In order for them to have light, they'd have to make a bunch of fires. And even then, you guys have tried to work by a fire before. It's not a lot of light, but God provided the light for them. He was taking care of them in their time of need, and they forgot that. Immediately forgot that God was taking care of them and providing for them. The next thing that they forgot was number 2. So they first forgot God's protection and provision. The next, they forgot what God did for them in the past. Okay? Anybody here like history? I love history. Of course, history nowadays, you got to be careful when you read it because people change it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and when you're young, you don't realize that. You think that what you read in the history book is absolutely right. It's usually tainted somehow. But they knew their history. I know they knew it. I wasn't there, but I know they loved their history so much that they wrote down, God told them to write down the Bible. This is a lot of history. So they knew their history. And they knew that God had taken care of their forefathers. They have that. They knew that. And you can see in the past in the Bible that God had taken care of them. God had taken care of Jacob. God had taken care of Abraham. All those before them, God provided for them and took care of them. They knew these stories. And they forgot immediately that God has provided for them. I know they had just left slavery, But they knew before that God had provided for them when they were in need, and God was going to provide again. And they just forgot that. And the last thing, which is one of the biggest ones, they forgot how bad it was in Egypt.
Yes.
Okay? Now I'm going somewhere with this, y'all. Hold on. They, in their fear even, they regretted leaving their captivity. Look at Exodus 14, Exodus 14, verse 12. All right? And I'm reading this directly from the Word, so... It says, didn't we say, they're talking to Moses, didn't we say to you in Egypt, leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. I mean, I guess there in their thought it was immediate death. And they were thinking it was just going to be better to be a slave. And so they forgot that God had protected their forefathers. They forgot that God protected them. And they forgot how bad it was in Egypt. In Egypt, they were slaves. You know they had to have worked hard days. Like I said, I've never been a slave, but I've had some terrible jobs, and I've worked hard for them. But they weren't getting paid for it. That was the difference. They were being forced to do it. Forced by their own hand because they sold their freedom. Their children were killed. Remember back in the beginning of Exodus, the Pharaoh went out and killed the children, the firstborns. And then the last thing that they forgot how bad it was in Egypt, it was not their home. Has anybody ever been somewhere and you just dreamt of being home? Yeah. A lot of times you might be at work, I wish I was home in my bed. Right? But that wasn't where they were supposed to be. Now look, I stayed in Brazil for 6 months before me and Adriana got married. And I love Brazil. It's one of my favorite places to go. But y'all, it ain't my home. It's not Louisiana. It's close. Me and Adriana were talking about that the other day, that Brazil, she said if she could have gone anywhere, she's glad she came to Louisiana because it's just close to Brazil. But it's still not the same, y'all. It's different. And I loved it there. I love my family there, and I miss being with them, but I love my home. And I'm sure some of y'all had to move different places where you weren't at home and you just didn't feel at home. These people have been gone from their home for generations. So, they forgot that God protected them. They forgot that God protected their forefathers in their past. And they forgot how bad Egypt was. So here they are, stuck at the Red Sea. Pharaoh's coming, and they're in a panic. Like I said, we would probably be in a panic too. Now, has anybody ever, and I've already asked this question again, but I'm going to reinforce it. Has anybody ever moved forward and felt like they got stopped at the Red Sea immediately? And I'm talking about our church right now, but this can apply to every person in here. But especially in our church, we've decided to do things to move forward, and we've stopped immediately. And it's hard sometimes because you get discouraged really easy. You know, you move forward just to feel like you're trapped, or even that you've moved backwards, or even that the situation's gotten worse. You've gone from being a slave to you're probably about to die. And that's happened to us before. And we're like, wow, I thought I was moving forward in faith and that God was going to take care of me, and now I feel like I'm going to die, or at least have to swim a long way, you know? And like I said, I love history, and not even just history like our forefathers, but my dad has always, I've grown up listening to my dad preach my whole life, even before I was born. So he had, how many sermons did he have when you were on the road? He had about 10. And he had a rotation of, because it's a great gig. Whenever you're an evangelist, you get to go to different churches and you preach to different people all the time. And so you can have your 7 or 8 that you love. And so Dad had his, and he preached on the family a lot. And he would always preach to the kids. He said, kids, listen to your parents because they've gone through the stuff and they know better. And a lot of times kids don't listen to their parents. Any of y'all laughing? Did y'all listen to y'all's parents? No. Now, see, the point is, though, is that I'm not listening to my parents a lot, but on some big things, every time I have to make a big choice, I go ask my parents and say, hey, what do you think about this? Even sometimes small things that are insignificant, I ask them, what do you think about this? And they're like, that's common sense, you don't know how to do, you don't know what to do with that. But I've always tried to listen to my parents because I know they've been there and they know what's best for me and they're thinking what's best for me. Now let's take a lesson from that and let's look at what the children of Israel did and how we can apply it to our lives, okay? Because that's how we apply the Bible. We've gone through the 3 things that they forgot. Let's think about those for us, okay? God's provided and protected all of us, right? We're all provided for and protected. It's easy to forget that God's protecting us. And I know I've preached a couple times and it just seems like every time that I get up here, it comes out. But when you're going 42 miles an hour down Highway 42, I'm serious, it's almost a joke now. But here, maybe God's got you slow because somebody was going to pull out in front of you if you were going the right speed. God's protecting us that way. Think of all the sicknesses that we could have had that God's protected us from, that we don't even know He's protecting us from. If you think like that, then you are just being thanked all the time. Lord, thank you. Because I think of whenever you're sick from something else and your immune system goes down. What's the sickness where your immune system stops working? Is it HIV? Autoimmune? So whenever you don't have an immune system, you get sick from everything. And that's not good. And so God's even put that in our bodies to protect us. All these things that God has done for us to protect us, we can't forget those things. Now, I'm going to go off on a side tangent here and just listen, okay? God provides for us and protects us. Some of us have better financial situations than others of us, okay? Some of us have better financial situations and seem to be in more debt. I'm not talking about myself, I'm just saying in general. Y'all listen carefully, okay? I'm going to talk about tithe for a second. And when I talk about tithe, when Dad talks about tithe, when anybody talks about tithe, it's not for this church, y'all. Please listen when I say that. This church is going to be okay whether or not you tithe. And that's just the truth, because God's blessed this church. And even if every person who tithes left, this church would still be moving. Now, it might be different, but this church would still move forward. When we talk about tithe, it's for you. It's for us. Okay, and I can tell you this firsthand. There was a time, and I didn't do it intentional, but it doesn't matter. I was robbing for the Lord. I forgot to pay my tithes for a couple months. And can you believe everything of mine started falling apart? I had a little car, and I blew the motor up in it. And then I replaced the motor, and the transmission blew up in it. And then I bought a Jeep, and everything on it blew up. And Mom's like, are you paying your tithe? And I'm like, oh no. And y'all, I'm serious. This is the God's honest truth. I started paying my tithe. In the next week, one of my bosses called, her husband called and said, hey, I got this truck, do you want it?
Wow.
I'm not making that up. I drove that old truck for like 4 or 5 years back and forth to college. God blesses you, okay? Whenever you're not robbing from Him, He's going to bless you. Now, does that mean that stuff's not going to break? Of course not. Stuff breaks. But God's going to bless what you have. And it's not because I'm saying, hey, I need you to tithe because I want to get a raise. That ain't it. Because God's going to bless me. God's blessed me no matter if I made a little bit of money or a little bit more money, because I don't made a lot of money. But God blesses me, okay? And God can bless you too. But you can't rob from Him, because if you're not tithing, He's going to curse you. And everything that you try to do is going to mess up. I promise you. But when you're blessed, God's going to bless you with these great things, okay? That's my side tangent. Okay? And that's encouragement, because I know everybody here tithes. I've told y'all, I don't know who tithes. Dad doesn't know who tithes, because we don't want to be partial, because we're human. We probably would. But seriously, the tithe is very important, and it's not like we're getting up here. And there are some ministers, I sometimes afraid to call ministers, that get up and say, you need to send me money and you'll be blessed. Send me $5,000 and you'll be blessed. And that's not of God, because they're asking money for themselves. And granted, when you give the tithe, that's going to the Lord's work, okay? Anyway, that's enough of that side tangent. We got to be diligent, and the Lord will bless us. That's going back to what we're talking about, okay? Children of Israel, we're going to look back at what they're doing. The Lord blessed them and protected them and provided for them. He's providing for us and protecting us. Amen?
Yes.
Okay, so He's always been there for us, even when we don't deserve it. There's been a lot of times where I didn't deserve to be blessed and the Lord blessed me. I can think of one. I was going to say a big thing, but she's not that big. But the Lord really blessed me in that particular situation. Yeah, thank you. Because I definitely didn't deserve. Oh, she cooked beans yesterday. I didn't deserve that. And they were good too. Were really good. I didn't deserve that. And the Lord blesses you even when you don't deserve it. I don't know what's going on. And when we're moving forward, we're better off than we were in our past. Does anybody ever move forward in their life, whether they've become a Christian or whether they've gone deeper in their walk, who wishes they could go back to where they were before that? Anybody here? I didn't think so. Mr. Clay, are you happier right now than you were a couple years ago?
Every day gets better.
Every day is better. And that's the truth, y'all. When we're moving forward, we're better than we were in the past.
Yes. Amen.
Because our past is death. Even if we were saved as a young child, that past was death. And that path was going to lead us into death. And salvation is so much greater than anything that this earth has to offer. All right, let's read. This is kind of going off onto another thing. It's going to really tie everything together, I hope. So let's read it. Exodus 14. Verses 4. Did anybody go through and were kind of bored with me talking and went back and read this chapter just a second ago? Anybody did? Because if you did, I was going to pick on you. But I do that sometimes, I'm not going to lie. But if you saw this or if you've read this before, I'm sure everybody has. But if not, this was pretty cool. It kind of hit me. I've read it, but it just kind of hit me today or last week when I was studying. Exodus 14, verse 4. Thus I will harden Pharaoh's heart. That's God talking. Thus I, God, will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will chase after them, and I will be honored through Pharaoh and all his army, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. Look at verse 8. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued the people of Israel while the people of Israel were going out. Did you guys see that?
Yeah.
The Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart. God allows us to be tested, okay? When we're moving out and it seems like whatever we're doing is getting stopped, that the Pharaoh's army is coming and we're stuck at the Red Sea, the Lord maybe did that to test us. And not just to test us, to prove his power to us. And that, y'all, that happens more times. We might give credit to the devil for that, but that's the Lord showing us that we need to trust him. Even in hard situations, when things are looking bad, it's probably just a test from God or just his plan to show his power. And so we know the rest of the story. Pharaoh went in, God opened up the Red Sea. Pharaoh went in, the water crashed down on him, and then all the people in Egypt saw the power of the Lord. Not just Egypt. If you want to, just flip a couple of pages ahead to Joshua chapter 2. Okay? Joshua chapter 2, verses 9 through 11. This is cool stuff. Okay? Joshua chapter 2, 9 through 11. And said to the men, I know that this is Rahab talking, the harlot that protected the spies in Jericho. She even knew about this. She said to the men, I know that the Lord has given you the land, and that the fear of you has fallen upon us in Jericho, and that all the inhabitants of the land melt away before you. Look at verse 10. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the two kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan. And then let's just skip down to verse 11. And as soon as we heard it, our hearts melted, and there was no spirit left in any man because of you. For the Lord your God, he is God in the heavens, above and on the earth. Y'all, this was just a harlot in a God-forsaken city. She knew about this. So if she knew about this, all of Egypt knew the power of God. So this one thing that God had planned out completely that looked like it was the end of the world for these Israelites, God had already planned, and his power was going to be shown to all these people. Not just to the Israelites who saw it and they believed it, but to the Egyptians and to all these people here.
That's good.
So we have to trust in God moving forward. And I'm moving forward. I'm so excited about the things that God has for this church. And we have a 5, 6, 7-year plan. And I truly believe that within 5 years, we're going to see that new sanctuary put up. Now, we're not talking about taking people from other churches. We're talking about fishing in the sea, not in a bucket. We're going to lead people to Christ. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to tell people. And look at that wall back there with all the baptisms that we've had. People who were here that weren't saved a year ago that have been coming here regularly. From the school even. Brad sitting right there. He's been here almost every week since he's come. And I'm super proud of you, man. It's just exciting to all these things. Now, one more thing. I'm almost done. Let's look at Exodus 14, 21 through 22. I'm wrapping this thing up. Like I said, I got a little bit of flipping today, but I promise you it's all coming together. It ain't me either. Verses 21 through 22. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord drove the sea back by a strong east wind all night, and made the sea dry land. And the waters were divided. And the people of Israel went into the midst of the sea on dry ground, the waters being a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. They walked on dry ground, y'all. Just when they thought they were either going to have to die or have to swim, they walked through dry ground. Do you know that when we're moving forward and these tests come in from us and these speed bumps come, that's all they are, speed bumps. It might look like this huge mountain, but it's just a little speed bump that God planned for. He knows what's happening, y'all. But when you think that you're not only you think you're gonna get wet, but not only are you not gonna get wet, you're not even gonna get your shoes muddy. Because God's gonna take care of us that way. He always does, He always will. We have to trust Him, amen? Let's pray. Lord, I just thank you, God. And Lord, I pray that we'll keep our eyes open and focused and trusting you, Lord. Even when things seem like they just couldn't get any worse, God, your plan is so much greater than ours. So Lord, I just pray today, Lord, that as we move forward in this church, Lord, as we move forward in our spiritual lives, Lord, that you'll give us the eyes to see what you're doing, God. As I've been speaking, I've been talking about moving forward as a church, moving forward in a spiritual life, but the first step is salvation. Because you can't move forward in your life with God unless you have a relationship with Him. And the way that you have a relationship with Him is to accept Him into your heart. Now, whether you're sitting here today listening to me, or maybe even on the internet listening, today can be the first day of your new walk with God. You just have to trust Him. You have to ask Him into your heart. It's a simple prayer to pray, but it will change your life. It'll make your life wonderful. It's not easy. Every day is a struggle, but it's the most important decision that you'll ever make. And your life will be radically changed if you make it. Today, if that's you, I'd like you to come to the front and talk to me or talk to the other counselors that we have up here. We're here to pray with you to help you get this decision straight today. Or maybe you're sitting there and you say, you know what, I know I'm a Christian, but my